And so before we get started, there are a lot of people that have done really incredible work for Public Forum in Romania, and so I'm going to thank some of them. So first, of course, I'd like to thank Professor Radu Pop. He's one of the Romanian Public Forum debate founding professors. He was involved with the 2020 Nationals last year, and he's pivotal to organizing this workshop and to organizing the 2021 Transylvania Castles of Mind tournament, which is going to occur in the future. I'd also like to thank Professor Briana Stoica, and they're both from Colegiul Național Alexandru Papiu Ilarian of Târgu Mureș. Lastly, I'd like to thank Director Cristina Ligia Șomeșan, the director of Colegiul Național Alexandru Papiu Ilarian. The support from this school for Public Forum has been truly incredible. Of course, on the American side, I'd also like to thank Dr. Kelly and his really outstanding support for this program. He came and spoke at the 2020 Nationals, and he's continued to support and encourage the growth of this program. I'd also like to thank the debate team captains who have supported us incredibly. And one of them, Samuel Chang, is actually here and he'll be speaking soon. Of course, I'd like to thank all of the other founding professors and all of the professors and students who have engaged, are engaging, and will engage in this activity. Last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank the Dean of Intech Academy, Miss Wendy Spector. I have to say that it's truly a pleasure collaborating with Intech. It's very, very fun. I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to be in that program. And now I'm really grateful for her for, yeah, I think I'm not on mute, Kyle, but thank you. Yeah, and it's really great that we can have all of this collaboration and this transatlantic element, this element of Romanians interacting and debating with Americans, would not be possible without Ms. Spector. Or without any of the other people that I've mentioned as well. So everyone is pivotal to this project, and I thank everyone for their involvement. And of course, let's not neglect to mention that the reigning champions of Romanian Public Forum debate, the winners of the 2020 Nationals, Antonia Vig and Cara Medea Șandru of Colegiul Național Alexandru Papiu Ilarian, are here right now. So let's have a round of applause for them. They will also be coming at the most likely will be coming at the Transylvania Castles of Mind tournament, where they will give some words there. All right, with all of this said, I hand over the word to Professor Radu Pop.
Hello, Teddy. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your kind words. My name is Radu Pop, and I teach social sciences at the Papiu College from Târgu Mureș, a small town in Romania in the heart of Transylvania. I'm very glad to be with you in this meeting, and first of all, I have to say that without Teddy and his hard work and dedication, this wouldn't have happened. I want to mention Teddy's father too. He is also very, very involved in organizing this tournament, this workshop. I must say I joined the Romania Public Forum project because I believe in the strength of the rational arguments, and also because I see the rational debating as a value, as a virtue. Since the last year, this project has grown constantly, and here we are ready to have the third tournament at the end of March, as Teddy said, a tournament which I hope will be as good as the other two. The first one, the National and the Black Sea in November last year. So this workshop is just a perfect opportunity for us to learn more about Public Forum and to make new friends, and why not to establish new partnership for the future. In the end, I would like to express my gratitude to all present students, teachers, judges, colleagues, Americans and Romanians too for making this possible. So thank you very much, and let's have some fun.
All right, thank you, Professor Paul. And now let's hear from one of the Horace Mann debate captains, Samuel Chang.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam. I've been a debater since, 7 years now, so it's been a while. and one of the presidents of debate at Horace Mann. And I'd just like to say that it's an honor to be here today, and I'd really like to thank Teddy for putting this amazing event together. I'd also like to thank all of you for showing up today, because events like these are important, right? Because I think debate does two things, and it's done these two things for me. And the first thing it does is it teaches you how to make those rational arguments. And it also teaches you how to research things to like an in-depth level, right? Because when you can think about why policy happens and what the background reason for why governments are deciding to make that policy is, that's when you can really start reasoning things out. And I think that logic is really important because schools don't normally cover that. I know at Horace Mann, we don't have classes that are dedicated to debate or dedicated to thinking about why governments are making the current event rational decisions that they are. And so debate is a different outlet that allows you to express that. Debate is also a community, and I think that's something that's really important, and that's why I'm really impressed by this event today, because the fact that we're combining both like American schools and Romanian schools to hold like a general debate conference is really incredible, and I think that the fact that we're making the best out of the COVID world speaks to that. I think that for me, debate has always been a community that I know I can rely on, because at Horace Mann, I know that I can rely on that team, whether it's like simply prepping out another team for a tournament or doing prep the night before, or whether it's like going to school or taking a test and studying for different classes, right? Because at the end of the day, debate is more than just like the actual like argument. It's also a community that people know that they can fall back on, and they know that they're going to be there to help other people with. And I think that it's really important that we hold events like these so we can continue to spread debate. And so I'd like to thank everyone for showing up today, because events like these are really important. So thank you so much. Have fun today, and I'm sure you're gonna knock it all out of the park.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you a lot. Yeah, Horace Mann debate has always been extremely meaningful for me. It helped me build my confidence. It helped me build my research skills. It helped me build my academic skills. Many of my best friends come from debate. And so then to have one of the Horace Mann debate presidents come and support these events to give these benefits of public forum debate to all, it's really heartwarming for me. So thank you a lot. All right, let's get into the presentation. And so today we're going to be talking about weighing. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can see it.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Can everyone see my screen bigger now?
Yes.
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 All right,
Yes.
let's begin. Perfect. So, the Romanian Public Forum Debate Group presents, in conjunction with Horace Mann School of New York City and Colegiul Național Alexandru Papiu Ilarian of Târgu Mureș, the February 13 Transatlantic Workshop, in preparation for the Transylvania Castle of Mind Tournament. With the special participation of InTech Academy. Now, of course, I would like to acknowledge the breadth and the depth of schools of all types from many regions that are coming here and attending this workshop and more broadly experiencing the benefits of public forum. In particular, I'd like to highlight the oldest school in Romania, founded in 1380, which should be here, several of the top 10 Romanian high schools nationwide, and of course, schools from many other types and from many other regions. And so we are incredibly grateful for your contribution to Romanian education, and I'd also like to say that we welcome everybody with open arms to join this movement to transform, regardless of what type of school you are, where your school is from, when the school joined. The benefits of public forum will apply to you as well. Okay, perfect. So today we're going to talk about weighing, which is the art of persuasion. And just a little bit about my qualifications. I'm Theodore Ganea. In addition to being the founding director of Romanian Public Forum Debate, I'm also a public forum debate semifinalist at the New York State level. And last year I was the best speaker at Ridge Debates. So before we start the presentation, I'd like to say that please don't feel compelled to take notes. I'd rather that you pay attention. And if taking notes is a problem, or if you want to have access to this, you can send your email to the Transylvania Castles of Mind tournament email. And we're going to send you a copy of these notes, as well as the Romanian Public Forum Debate Compendium, which is a book that I've written, and we'll send it to you for free so that you have access to all of these tricks of public forum debate and the ways to conduct public forum debate. And so I believe weighing, at least on my version of it, should be around page 101. You don't have to read the book front cover to back cover, but rather just pick out the chapters that suit you the best, and then you can read them. Okay, so I should have texted the right email in the chat. If the email isn't correct, then I ask that Professor Pop rectify it.
It's correct, Daddy.
All right, perfect. Let's get rolling. Ooh, there we go. So, we're going to start with debate in general. Then we're going to move down more specifically to public forum debate, and then we're going to move to the skill of weighing. So what is this purpose of debate? Fundamentally, debate asks three major questions. 1, what are the facts? 2, is it good or bad? And 3, what action should be taken? The third one is bolded because that's the most common. Now, each debate resolution is going to focus on one of these three questions. The topics can tackle literally any issue in the world, from education to technology to international conflict. The guiding motto of public forum debate resolutions is that they should be current, so we're not debating about events that happened in the 1600s. They should be interesting and important. Now, we at Romanian Public Forum Debate truly believe in, democracy and empowering the debate community, which is why all of our topics are sourced from you and then voted by you. So you have full control, or pretty much full control, over the topic selection process. At any rate, the goal in debate is to use logic and evidence to prove your side of the resolution to the judge. Simple enough. Okay, what is public forum debate? So now public forum debate consists of 4 debaters, 2 teams of 2. Each speaker gives 2 speeches depending on their role. So for the first speaker in a team, it's going to be 7 minutes of total speaking time. For the second speaker, it's going to be 6 minutes of total speaking time. In public forum debate, there's this emphasis on hard evidence and logical points. In other words, it's not enough to just say hypothetical logical arguments, you also want to be grounded in reality. And it's not enough to just spit statistics at a person, you also want to understand the logic of what's happening. This dual emphasis is what arguably makes public forum a very well-balanced debate format, especially when compared to others. Now, public forum is also concise, so speaking time is very limited. This is good because it encourages word economy, so it forces you to really pick and choose your words, which winds up making you more persuasive. And as mentioned before, it requires evidence. Okay, let's begin with our refresher, because I know not all people have engaged in public forum debate before. And I'd just like to mention, once again, if you email us, we can also send you a link to some YouTube workshops on public forum in general. We can send you a link to the Romanian Public Forum Debate channel, YouTube channel, and all of the workshops are there. But it's still important to refresh these attributes of public forum debate. So let's start with argumentation. There are 3 parts to an argument. The claim is the main point of the argument. It's what you're trying to prove true, and it's a statement you're making about the world. So if I say the sky is blue, that's a claim. If I say that West African urbanization will lead to the amalgamation of energy grids, that is also a claim. So clearly, claims can be very complex, very simple, or pretty much anything in between. Then the next part is the warrant. The warrant proves the claim. and it uses facts and logic to do so. So if my claim is that the sky is blue, I say, judge, you look at the sky, it's blue. That's my warrant. It's evidence, and there's some logic in there. Then we go to the impact. The impact is why an argument matters to the real world, and you need to use facts and logic to prove this. So for example, the sky is blue, the argument doesn't really have much of an impact, which means that it's not a complete argument. This is a very important point. In public forum, arguments must have all three types. You need a claim, you need a warrant, and you need an impact. All of these are essential to an argument. If you don't have one of them, your argument is not complete. By the same token, since all parts are essential, any part of an argument can be attacked to try to disprove the whole thing. If I disprove the warrant of the argument, its impact does not matter. Okay, let's talk about the debate round. The debate round is pretty simple. There are 4 speeches. The constructive speech comes first. This speech is 4 minutes, and it's given by the first speakers of each team. In the constructive, you're going to read your opening arguments to the judge. Now, here's what's very important. You're going to read these arguments. You're not creating them on the spot. These are arguments that you should be doing at home, and it should use evidence that you're preparing at home and bringing into the debate round. You also do not need to memorize these arguments. Obviously, you should know what you're saying and shouldn't just be reading rote words. But the problem with memorizing words is that, first of all, it's very time-consuming, and I'd rather you spend the time learning more about the topic. And second of all, if you memorize words and then you get one of the words wrong, the whole speech gets derailed. So that's not good for you. That said, you should still try to be passionate, right? Just because you can read your arguments doesn't mean that you should be reading them like this. You should be reading with some volume and some passion. After the constructive, we go to the first crossfire. And there are 3 of these crossfires: the first, the second, and the grand. So in the first crossfire, the speaker won of both teams. So the people who gave the constructive will now alternate asking each other questions for 3 minutes. After they do that comes the rebuttal, given by the second speakers. The rebuttal is 4 minutes, and you use the rebuttal to attack the opening arguments of the other team. After which, there is second crossfire. So the 2 rebuttal speakers alternate asking each other questions for 3 minutes. Then we have the summary speech. The summary speech is given by the first speaker. It is 3 minutes, and in this speech you will repair your arguments, defend your arguments, continue attacking your opponents, and weigh the round. After grand crossfire, where all 4 speakers get to ask each other questions at once, please don't make it too chaotic. We then have the final focus, which is really about weighing the round and explaining why the judge should vote for you. And we're going to talk about what weighing is soon. Now that we know what public forum is, why public forum? The first thing is fun, right? As Sam in particular spoke to, public forum is all about building community and building connections. You get to know people, you get to make friends, and you get to have fun with those friends. So that's a good thing. Public forum also helps you build several skills. Public speaking in English is a big one. Even for native English speakers like me, public forum has still made my public speaking far better, and even my command of English better. It could also begin helping the process or continue to improve your English language abilities. Public forum also helps with persuasiveness, getting your point across. It's concise. The time limits make you pick and choose your words, which makes you more persuasive. There's this idea of the impact of public forum, which is that you need to understand that debate is not just about proving you're right, but it's about getting stuff done and making the world a better place. And when you get into an argument, you aim to do something productive with that. And so that idea is what public forum teaches. Lastly, of course, public forum is a global style of debate. while the United States is the birthplace of the format, it has since spread to the Gulf states, East Asia, China, Taiwan, etc., and now to Romania. You're joining a global movement, which is really, really cool, in my opinion. I mean, even at this workshop, you're going to be seeing Romanians and Americans debating in public forum format. So it's a bridge across the Atlantic, if you want to think of it that way. And let's be honest, you guys want to win. You want to go to public forum competitions, and it's always nice to win. So let's talk about winning and weighing. The first key insight is that you have to change your perspective. Winning is about getting the judges to vote for you. That's all. You don't need to convince your partner. You don't need to convince your opponents. You don't even need to convince the spectators. You only need to get the judge to vote for you. As such, you should aim to view the round through the judge's eyes. And now for judges, the central question is, why should I vote for them? And some words that you can think of this concept as are, would you rather? So would you rather argument A or argument B, or prefer to, or prioritize? And these are all trigger words for weighing, because weighing is when you tell the judge how and why to vote for you. Now, something that's very important to understand is that judges are almost always good faith. So a lot of times debaters don't do as well as they'd like, and they blame judges. And that's not fair, because professors and parents dedicate hours and hours of their time for free, not to, destroy or discourage a debater, but rather to do a public service. That said, judging is really, really hard. And I know because I've judged dozens and dozens of rounds. Frequently, judges get overloaded, and then they make bad decisions. So for example, in one of the Yale rounds, I think the finals, there were 15 arguments in the last 2 minutes of final focus. 15. That is way too much. The judges did not know what was happening, and one of the judges was honest and said, look, the only thing I understood was the first minute of pro's first speech, so I vote for pro. That is a horrible decision. That is a really bad reason to vote for someone. But it is not the judge's fault. It is the debater's fault. Whenever the judges make a bad decision, as long as they're in good faith, it is the debater's fault. 15 arguments is just too much to handle. Sometimes, though, the issue isn't too many arguments, it's that a judge has difficulty choosing between two. For example, the issue of famine versus war. How am I supposed to choose which one's better? I mean, in a famine, millions of children could starve to death, but in war, millions of children could get shot. So me as the judge, it makes my life difficult, and I get frozen, and then I don't make a good decision. The solution to overload is weighing. Weighing is just comparing to help the judges vote for you. The idea is that este că cântărești. That's why the image of the scales are there. And so you want to answer the judge's would you rather or prefer to or prioritize question. So why should the judge vote for your argument and not for theirs? There are a billion real-life applications for weighing. Weighing is the art of persuasion, because if you go to a job interview or when you submit a college application, what you're really doing is you're telling the judge, the person who's interviewing you, why they should vote for or choose you and not someone else. And that's what weighing is about. Of course, critically, weighing is this sinew of debate. It connects the fun and the skills and the winning of debate. And because of that, you need to weigh always. Even if you attack an opponent's argument, you still need to weigh against it. Because there might be situations where your argument is attacked and their argument is attacked, so the attacks are not going to decide the round for the judge, and you need to weigh for them. So, let's talk a little bit more about weighing. The first thing that I'm going to stress is that weighing is comparing. And the reason why I'm stressing this is because a lot of teams in the US show up there and say, oh, our argument is important. But that's not what weighing is about. Weighing, you should explain why your argument is important and also why it's more important than your opponent's. You should explain why your argument is true and also why it's more true. The point is to compare arguments, not just to talk in a vacuum. I'm using the word explain. This is because weighing is an argument. It's not an assertion. You cannot just go up there and say, our argument has a bigger impact. You have to explain why it has a more important impact. How do you weigh? 3 simple steps. 1, you're going to establish the comparison. So you repeat your argument and you repeat their argument. This is a very important step that gets overlooked. Because if the judge doesn't know what you're comparing, the rest of weighing is pointless. You have to make things clear for the judge. After you establish the comparison, you can then weigh the evidence and logic. So you can compare which side has better evidence, which side has better logic, which side should the judge believe. And then you're going to weigh the impacts. So which argument is more important? Which argument should the judge prioritize? Let's talk about weighing the impacts first. Once again, an impact is why your argument is important. So impact weighing is explaining why your argument is more important than your opponent's. This is going to be the main type of weighing, and it's usually going to win you the round. This is because when you weigh on impact, you get to, how should I explain? When you weigh on impact, you are explaining that your argument is more important than theirs, which means that if you prove your argument, so if your opponent believes your argument, then nothing your opponents say matters, because your argument is more important, your argument comes first. So if you win your argument, the judge votes for you regardless of the opponent's arguments, or at least the opponent's opening arguments. And if you lose the argument, you don't have an argument, so you're going to lose, again, regardless of the opponent's arguments for the other side. So in that case, the whole round really boils down to whether the opponents can disprove your argument. It puts the debate on your terms, and it gives you a huge advantage. Impact weighing should generally be done in the last 2 speeches of the round, so in summary and in final focus. Okay, there are a lot of ways to weigh on impact. And once again, you don't have to take notes. You don't have to worry about copying this down, because if you send an email to the email we've put in the chat, I'm going to send you this PowerPoint. So you're going to have access to all of this. And the point is to think logically about it. So why would one impact be more important than another? It could be bigger. It could be more people affected. It could be more likely. It could last longer. It could happen sooner. All of these are ways to weigh. And so what's important is that all of these questions are comparative. So it's not how big is your impact, it's how much bigger is your impact. This means you have to say, this is how big my impact is, this is how big their impact is, this is why my impact is bigger. So you have to interact with what they're saying as well. And lastly, there's also this idea of whether the argument will happen regardless of topic. So, for example, if I argue that the sky is blue, that's going to be blue regardless of whether we vote to end arms sales to Saudi Arabia. It's still going to stay blue. And you can think outside the box. All right. And so what's important is, remember that weighing is an argument. It's not just an assertion. So you can't just say your impact is more likely, for example. You also must explain why your impact is more likely. All right, I'm going to give you an example, because right now this is all in the abstract. Let's make it concrete. So I'm going to weigh an example between famine versus war, and I'm going to try to prove why war is more important. So let's see how I do it. Okay. Judge, this debate comes down to the opponent's impact of famine versus my impact of war. Here are 3 reasons why ending war is more important. 1. War lasts longer. Sternlicht of Forbes magazines explains that many famines are caused by temporary disruptions in the market or natural disasters, which get fixed by the end of the year. Meanwhile, wars like the Hundred Years' War can last for centuries, lasting far longer and causing way more damage. Second, war affects more people. Since people produce more food, ever more food globally, most food shortages affect local villages, while wars spiral out of control like World War II and attack the whole world, killing way more people. Lastly, war is actually a cause of famine, so ending war will end many famines. Oxfam explains that the world's worst famine, the Yemeni famine, which is starving 7 million people, is only happening because war is blockading food imports and burning their farms. That's why the National Center for Biotechnology Information concludes that the worst famines are man-made. Judge, even if you don't believe war is more important than famine, you still vote for us because a vote to end war is a vote to end famine as well. So a couple of things to notice, which is that first, I had evidence. I'm not just saying random stuff. Second, I gave 3 reasons, and I gave them in a clear fashion. And lastly, I was talking with the judge. So I told the judge, here is one way to vote for me. Here's another way to vote for me. Here's a third way to vote for me. And in that way, I kind of communicate with the judge and make it easy for them to actually vote for me. Now, this was a bit of a rigid round, or at least a rigid summary speech, because this is more for an academic purpose. So if you are able to add rhetorical flourish to this, please, by all means, you're welcome to. But this is a good scaffolding for how you should weigh on the impact. Now, before I go on, can someone name me one of the types of weighing that I used in that little speech?
Scope, duration, and uniqueness.
Brilliant. That was 3 ways, but it works. So yes, scope, how many people are affected. Duration, how long it'll last. And the last one was a mix of uniqueness and also prerequisite. So it's really uniqueness, but it's also thinking outside the box of how I can get to their impact. But yeah, that's great. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, the questions, you should write them down because we're going to have a Q&A session at around 12, and then I'll answer all of them. All right, let's talk about warrant weighing. Okay, so a warrant is why your argument is true. Warrant weighing is why your argument is more true than your opponent's. Pretty simple. Now, a judge is not going to vote for an argument they believe is false, even if they believe the argument is more important. So while generally speaking, impact weighing is more common, warrant weighing is very important. The other place where warrant weighing is important is if you have the same impact. So if I'm talking about lives and you're talking about lives, we can't compare the impacts because we're both talking about lives. This is a huge mistake debaters make all the time. One team will say, we save X lives. The other team says, no, we save Y lives. And then the first team comes up and say, well, X is greater than Y. So we save more lives. But that's not how it works because you're either saving lives by being pro or you're killing people by being pro. So you can't compare the impacts. Instead, you have to compare the warrants. Who should the judge believe more that they save lives? And warrant weighing, you also want to do this in the last 2 speeches of the round, summary and final focus. So there are a couple of ways to weigh on warrant. One of them is to think about evidence. So who has the more recent evidence? Who has more relevant evidence? So for example, evidence about online school from the 1970s is not as good as evidence about online school today. On the issue of relevant, if we're talking about West Africa and you bring me evidence from India and my evidence is from West Africa, my evidence is more relevant. There's also the issue of authoritative, right? An actual academic study should be trusted more than some random website. And of course, the issue of being more accurate. If your source can be shown to have basic facts wrong, then that source becomes less credible. But debate isn't only about comparing evidence, it's also about comparing logic. And comparing logic, there's not really one way to do it, but you want to think in general about how plausible an argument is. Which argument is more true, and which argument has a stronger link in, or which argument leads more directly into their impact. Okay. So now I'm going to give you an example for warrant weighing. And I'll give everyone like 15 seconds just to have a little breather. Okay. So I'm going to make up this hypothetical example about whether dogs are good or not. Okay. Judge, this debate comes down to whether dogs make people happy, our argument, or whether dogs make people sad, their argument. Here are 3 reasons why our argument is better. First, our evidence has more authority. While we are citing scholarly studies, our opponents are literally citing dogsartrash.com. Don't believe them. Second, our evidence is more relevant. Their evidence is about the negatives of pets in general, but our data is specific to dogs. Lastly, our argument just makes more sense. We tell you that cute dogs make people happy, which is true, while our opponents have this complicated argument about the cost of dog food driving people into poverty, even though dog food is nowhere near the biggest cost a family could have. Our argument's logic is cleaner and more direct, so vote for it. So obviously this is a hypothetical, and hopefully your opponents will not be citing dogsartrash.com. And notice how I establish the comparison and then I go clearly into the reasons while communicating with the judge and telling them why to vote a certain way. Okay. We're nearing towards the latter third of the presentation. We've learned about weighing. So let's talk about what you actually do with weighing. So weighing is the essence of the summary and final focus speeches. Both of these speeches build towards the weighing. Sometimes you might want to put the weighing first, but still, the point is that the weighing is the core of the last 2 speeches in the round. So a lot of people have asked me, what do you do in summary? What do you do in final focus? The first word is to weigh, because in these speeches, you need to tell the judge why they should vote for you. And again, we're going to take the 3 steps of weighing, but now we're going to modify them for the speech as a whole. Step 1, establish a comparison. Repeat your arguments, but if you're anyway repeating them, you might as well repair and defend them, because it's going to put you in a better position when you weigh. Then, repeat the opponent's arguments, but you might as well continue to attack the opponent's arguments and continue the round. So that is going to weaken your arguments and strengthen yours. Now that you're already giving yourself an advantage, you can then move to warrant and impact weighing. And I repeat, you don't always have to do both warrant and impact. There will be times where an argument can have the same impact but different logic, or the same logic but different impact, and in that case, you can't really do both. So, what are the summary and final focus speeches? Just as a refresher, these are the last 2 speeches of the round, and they're very similar to each other, because the summary speech, first speaker 3 minutes, Final focus is done by the second speaker, 2 minutes. The goal of both speeches is to convince the judge to prefer your side. This is weighing. All right. This is the key concept for summary and final focus. Summary and final focus are like a funnel. You start off with a lot of material and arguments in the constructives and rebuttals. And if you're like the people from the Yale debate I was telling you about, you just keep on talking about them and you have 15 arguments in final focus. But you're not going to make that mistake. Instead, the right way to do it is in summary to start narrowing down the arguments. Taking your most important arguments and their most important arguments and comparing them to make life clearer for the judge. In final focus, you're going to talk even less about the arguments and more about comparing the arguments. And if you're successful in final focus, some of the key words and ideas are going to filter down into the judge's ballot as a reason why they voted for you. So because summary and final focus are a winnow, while summary can have new arguments because you need to be able to defend your own side, final focus cannot have new arguments. Everything in final focus has to come from summary. This means that the team has to be on the same page before you start the summary, because whatever you say in the summary will also decide greatly what you say in final focus. Of course, I'd like to clarify, when I say arguments, I mean basic reasons why your side is right and responses. In final focus, you can and are expected to bring new weighing, new ways of comparing the arguments. But the arguments themselves should be the same or fewer that were in summary. And so my tip to you is to take prep time to discuss right before summary. So in debate, each team is going to have 3 minutes of preparation time, and I suggest that you leave aside at least a minute to discuss the state of the round with your partner. All right. So I'm going to give an example summary speech, after which, ahead of schedule, we can get to questions and answers. Okay, so this is going to be a full summary speech. It's I debated at Stanford last weekend in the TOC division, where I won 5, lost 2, so a pretty good record. And this is a modified version of one of the speeches I actually gave. It's modified to make it shorter because I'm going to be reading it slower than I would otherwise. Right? This speech also is pretty sober and rigid. This is because I'm trying to teach the structure of summary as opposed to the rhetorics of debate. But if you're good at rhetoric, please include that in there. The last disclaimer, this is on a complicated topic. Can everyone hear me? Okay, cool. I don't know why it muted for a moment, but it's fine. So it's going to be on the topic of West Africa urbanization. This is a very obscure topic. It's a very complicated topic, and it's very removed from both America and Romania. So you might not understand all of the references. And also, this is a speech out of context. Still, however, if this speech is good, it will persuade you to vote a certain way. And so it's fine if some of these stuff aren't things you're familiar with. Your debates, which are topics you voted for, are not going to be like this, because your debates are going to be something very familiar to you. So with all of that disclaimer, I'm going to start with, in debate, you're allowed to do a brief off-time roadmap. So right before you give the speech, you're allowed to say what you're going to cover in the speech to the judge. So I'm going to start with that and then give the speech. Everyone ready? Cool. A brief off-time roadmap for this speech. Judge, we're debating on West African urbanization. the creation of cities, and we're pro. The three issues in this round are going to be rural versus urban life, jobs, and pandemics. Time starts now. Start on the issue of rural versus urban quality of life. Judge, you should vote pro because urbanization has improved the lives of 200 million West Africans. This is because they have left rural life, which is worse in West Africa, for urban life. Indeed, rural is worse than urban for two reasons. One, the IMF finds that rural West Africans have 20% lower wages and 13% higher poverty rate compared to urban West Africans. Even worse, because rural infrastructure is non-existent, whereas even poor urban areas have some infrastructure, the IMF furthers that rural poverty is more severe in every single way. Since poverty increases the chance of death by 67%, according to McFall, this is a clean way to vote pro. Second, rural life harms children. Martinko 20 finds that rural Africa currently has 1.5 million child slaves on cocoa plantations alone, a number that will increase without urbanization. Furthermore, rural sewage infrastructure is non-existent. Combining these two factors, the National Center for Biotechnology Information finds that if children in rural areas were moved to urban areas, 80,000 fewer of them would die every single year. Our opponents have not responded to this. This is a clean vote for pro. On the issue of jobs, we tell you that as West Africa urbanizes, markets, workers, and consumers agglomerate, lowering the production costs for small businesses. That's why Aruri finds that small businesses in West Africa are empirically more profitable in cities as opposed to the countryside. Small businesses are creating jobs. So in Nigeria alone, over a 3-year period, small businesses grew by 117% and created 1 million new jobs, mostly for the poor, lifting 90% of them out of poverty. Our opponents give two responses. First, they say there's not enough infrastructure for businesses in cities. But this clearly can't be true since small businesses are already being created in massive numbers. Their other response is their own first contention, where they claim African cities have bad land use, so they can't support businesses. But Judge, you weigh my warrant over theirs. First, their evidence is before 2010, while ours is more recent. Second, their evidence talks about all developing countries, but our evidence is specific to West Africa. Lastly, their evidence is theoretical about what might happen, but our evidence, we tell you that small businesses are already growing in West Africa, which means land use can't be that bad. Finally, let's weigh jobs against pandemics. Our opponents claim that West African urbanization might, in the future, create global pandemics by putting people closer together, where they could transmit a virus. But we tell you that urbanization is already creating jobs and lifting tens of millions out of poverty. Here are 3 reasons why this is more important. 1, probability. A global pandemic of large scale has literally never come from West Africa. The closest is Ebola, which infected 10 people outside of West Africa. Meanwhile, urbanization is already creating tens of millions of jobs now. Second, urbanization solves the problem of pandemics. As explained earlier, urban areas have much better sanitation infrastructure than rural West African areas, which diffuses both disease and their impacts. Lastly, poverty, I'd argue, is more important than death. When a person dies, they die. But poverty is intergenerational, meaning that when a person is pushed into poverty, their descendants centuries down the line are also pushed into poverty. This is super important because McFall 18 explains that every person in poverty has a 67% higher chance of dying, meaning that one person going into poverty pushes more people into death than one person dying. To lift tens of millions of lives and save millions of lives in West Africa, we urge you to vote pro. All right, so there was a lot going on there. I was giving responses, I was defending my own case, I was doing weighing, and it was a complicated round where a lot of arguments were happening. But what I would like to say is that in the rebuttal speech before I gave this summary, there were 12 arguments. And so now there are 3 issues. And because I condensed, and my partner and I condensed the round in a simple way, we were able to win that round. Okay. So we're going to have a demonstrative match. But before we have a demonstrative match, we have an opportunity for quite some time for questions and answers. As we planned in the schedule, we're going to be getting, we're going to have Q&A until 12:15 or 8:15. So we have 20 minutes for questions and answers. And then there's going to be a 15-minute intermission, after which our debaters, one Romanian, one American, will engage in the first ever transatlantic debate round. Okay. Questions?
For the Romanian team, how was your first experience debating in a public forum debate style?
Okay, that's a pretty interesting question. So, I started debating in 6th grade. And when I started debating, I remember the first topic I really debated and researched for was the issue of gun control. And so I remember going to one of these NYCUDL tournaments, wearing this full suit in a hot, steamy room. And I remember debating with my partner and thinking, why hadn't I done this sooner? Because I was just having so much fun. It was a blast. We talked about crazy, cool arguments. We also talked about legitimate, simple arguments on the topic. It was all a game of maneuvering, of logic, and of evidence. And it was what really struck me is just how respectful the other debaters were. It was really a community. Like, sure, we go into the debate round and we debate each other, and maybe we get a little bit heated because we want to win. But as soon as the round is over, we exchange phone numbers, we have fun. Back in the days pre-COVID, we shook hands and gave hugs, and it was really fun. And so when I had finished my tournament, I didn't win many rounds. I was new to this. But even though I had been consistently losing, I thought, I want to do more of this. And so I did more of this, and then I started winning. Yeah.
Is it okay for the opponents to cut each other's phrases during the debate?
Okay, interruptions. So, especially in the online format, it's very easy to interrupt people by accident. That needs to be taken into consideration. What I would say is, some judges want debaters to be aggressive. Other judges don't like aggressive. And that's really the judge's preference, and that's something the judge could communicate to the debaters. What I would say is, if one team is interrupting another team, you can deduct speaker points from them. So you can say, I don't like the way you're speaking, this is not good. But they are allowed to interrupt each other.
Good. Interruption is one thing. Don't let the other one to finish the sentence on purpose, not by mistake. I think it's another thing. So yeah, you just clear it for me. Thank you.
Perfect. And of course, by the way, if a team is being really rude, like not letting the other guy speak at all, or if they're saying stuff that are racist or sexist or all of those nasty stuff, then that's a big issue. And you might just have to vote against the team for that, or if they break decorum and start giving the F word in the middle of a speech, like that's not okay. And that violates the rules of debate.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah. By the way, I have judged like 100 rounds and I've never had to vote for a team because they broke the rules or against it.
It's okay. It's not that kind of people that are into this. But anyway,
Exactly.
It's to set some limits, some boundaries.
Precisely. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
What do you think are make for stronger arguments, the emotional ones or the purely factual ones? Like cold, hard facts or the human side?
Yeah, I think you can probably guess what the answer is going to be. Both. The best arguments and the ones that have worked the best are when you combine cold, logical facts and statistics with human emotion and with important impacts. And so, I mean, for example, if there's in the speech that I just gave, you can become more vivid by talking about the importance of poverty and the nastiness of like death. And those are human impacts. Of course, you also want to have evidence confirming these will happen. So if you go too emotional and have no substance, then the other team's going to call you out on it. Like, okay, they're saying these emotional stuff, but they have no evidence. This isn't an argument. If you have too many facts, and just numbers and numbers and numbers, you'll confuse the judge, and the judge will think, okay, fine, I get there's a 23% increase in FDI, but why should I care about that? But the best is to strike a balance.
Thank you.
That's a really good question, Terry.
And to stay objective, I believe, not take parts.
As the judge, you don't want to take parts. As a debater, you will be towards one side because that's your role. You're debating for one side or for another.
Yes, but you have to be able to defend each side, no matter
Exactly.
your opinion, regardless of your opinion or feelings or thoughts.
Exactly. That's a great observation because there will be so all of these rounds are decided by coin flips, which means you could go from passionately arguing pro to passionately arguing con in the course of an hour.
Yes.
So you have to be able to do both.
For both. Yes. We're just saying the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So are there any questions about, I can do general debate questions if you guys have them, but before, are there any questions specific about weighing or anything that was said in this presentation?
I think those were clear enough. You were so very clear. I don't know, my opinion.
Thank you. I try. I rehearsed this only 10 times.
I'm sure you did.
But yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can go back to general debate questions. Just ask away.
I would have a question, please.
Sure.
It's regarding the judge. So let's take in consideration that we have a judge with a basic amount of knowledge, or what is the knowledge, the level of knowledge that a judge has? On what level of knowledge can a debater rely on when talking to a judge?
That is a very tough question. That's a question that is actually a pretty big, you're striking at a very big debate within the American debate community about the nature of debate that's happening right now. And it's about how much should we be screening our judges. And so what the current position is that judge, your arguments need to be understood by a citizen judge. So if you take a parent off the street who has like some sort of education and is like, okay, they should be able to understand your argument. So some judges will obviously be much more versed in a topic than others. And for some topics like West African urbanization, your judges probably have never heard of the arguments you're bringing before you bring them. The idea is that your arguments should be, don't just spit out facts. The argument should be a narrative, kind of a story about what's happening. And it should be a story that the judge can understand. And if you construct your arguments properly, the judge will understand what you're saying.
Great, thanks.
But yeah, and to that point, that's why whenever I teach debate, I always reiterate, you have to repeat the major arguments before you compare them. You have to repeat your arguments at the beginning of summary. You have to clarify the arguments in crossfire if your opponent starts throwing doubt on them. Because the point is to be clear, clear, and clear. And if you're clear, it doesn't matter how much the judge knows. The judge, the point of debate is to choose between what the debaters bring. So the judge will just be choosing between what the two sides are presenting.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, Robert. Okay, any other questions from Romanians, from Americans, about debate, about my experience with debate?
As a second speaker, how much time do you think should be put into like researching a topic?
Great question. Thank you, Jeremy. So cases, your opening arguments are going to be read by the first speaker. But the opening arguments should be a team effort. The amount of research that goes into opening arguments should be equal. This is because the opening arguments is what you're going to be arguing for the whole debate round. So your partner, when they go up to the rebuttal or they go up to final focus, need to know what you're arguing so that they don't contradict it. They need to have a say in the argument so that they can adjust their strategy to the argument that you guys are making. So I'd say second speakers and first speakers should be pretty much putting equal work into the constructive and equal work. And also some teams do this thing called block files, where they think of the possible arguments on the topic and then pre-prepare responses. If you're doing those, you should also be doing equal work, right? The first speaker needs to know what the common responses are to their opponents and to their own arguments so that they can defend them or give them. So yeah, for most of these things, the two speakers should be working equally because the point is to win. You guys are a team. You're either winning or losing as a team. Great question, Jeremy.
I have another question. It's regarding the debaters this time. So I played other formats of debate, and the format I was playing on and I'm used to is there is a government, that's the pro team, I would say, and there's the opposition. And there's clear that the perspective is, we have the perspective of the state. Like the state, a democratic state, has to do some changes, and we are fighting for these changes. Like the pro team comes with the change, and the opposition has to say why the change is not good. What are the perspectives here? Is it like advocacy, a team of advocacy students, or is it like a government, or what's the perspective?
Great question. So I've actually done British parliamentary debate before. It was really fun. And the perspective is a little bit different. So thank you for asking that question. In public forum is a little bit, in some ways, simpler. The procedures aren't as complicated, so it lets you focus more on the arguments. Basically, in public forum, you have a resolution, a topic. The pro says the resolution is true. The con says the resolution is false, period. So if you want to say the topic of the 2020 nationals was, on balance, online school benefits society. If you're pro, you're going to try to prove that online school benefits society. If you're con, you're going to prove that it doesn't. If we want it to be interesting and put in a not in the resolution, so if we change the resolution and we say, resolved, online school harms society, then the pro says that it harms society, and the con says that it is good for society. So you're just arguing the statement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's pretty logical. Thank you.
Yeah. And just to underline, I know that in British parliamentary, you kind of have like 2 teams on the pro and 2 teams on the con, and there's some strategy because only one of those 4 teams can win. In debate, there's no equivalent with the speakers, right? Either the pro wins as a team or the con wins as a team.
to a question.
Yeah.
I am used to another debate format and didn't understand this in part of Crossfire. Like, is there a certain order? I mean, is the speakers ask questions, or they are just each other, or?
Okay. Yeah, the Wi-Fi is a little bit shaky, but I heard that you're asking about Crossfire, which is great. So Crossfire is a very, very important part of public forum. It's dynamic and it's creative, and that's really when your logic skills and rhetoric skills shine. So in the first Crossfire, you have, or let's leave aside the grand Crossfire. The first two Crossfires, you have two people in them, one from each team. These people ask each other questions. Usually the team that spoke first goes first, asks a question. The other guy can answer. Then the other guy asks a question, and so on. Now, ideally, teams would be nice and would not interrupt each other and would go orderly. In practice, teams sometimes, there is a certain strategy where you want to get as much virtual like time, space as possible for yourself, but you want to do so in a way that is not rude. The point is, pretty much it's just 3 minutes where the two debaters get to ask each other questions and debate each other directly. In the Grand Crossfire, it's the same deal. The only difference is that now all 4 debaters have the 3 minutes, and any one of those 4 debaters can ask a question to any other of those 4 debaters. Although obviously if you're pro, you should not be questioning your partner. That's like not good. But the point is, that's pretty much what Crossfire is. Does that answer your question, Christina, or are there any other follow-ups?
No, thank you. It's okay.
All right, perfect. So we have 2 minutes, so probably enough time for 1, maybe 2 more questions, and then we go into intermission.
I'll have another question about Crossfire then, follow-up. So, as you said, first team starts, the pro team starts with the questions, and then so on, it's in order. But what happens if one team has more questions than the other one? Like the pro team has 4 questions and the other team has 2 questions, and this order is disrupted. What happens then?
Then the order gets interrupted.
Oh, okay.
I mean, yeah, like, I guess public, in general, a lot of the American debate formats tend to be a lot more flexible. Like, we're all about flexibility. So frequently what will happen is a team will ask a question, the other team will give a kind of long answer, and then the first team will ask like a follow-up question, and the other team will be fine with that because they want to focus on this one issue. So it should be in order. Pro starts first, or not pro, sorry. First speaking team starts first. The other team should eventually get questions, but if one team has more questions, then they'll just ask more questions.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Teddy, what level are the debaters today from Romania?
What level? So this is the first time we're competing with Americans, so it's a bit hard to gauge. What I would say is all levels. I know there's some people here that are perhaps completely new to debate. There are also, I know for a fact that there are some really good debaters here. Like, the people who won the 2020 Nationals won it in a very deserved fashion. And they were really good debaters, and the rounds had were less fast, but I would definitely compare the persuasiveness and quality of their arguments to top American debaters.
But my question is, my debaters, they're novice to intermediate. They're not the open, they're not the advanced. What level are they going against?
They should be going against I would say some sort of intermediate level.
Okay. mean, we'll do it American style, but we'll stay in there and work it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And yeah, I mean, again, it's difficult to gauge. This is the first time we're gauging.
That's fine. We're down with it. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so it's 12:16, and so I know that the two teams who are going to be debating, and we're going to announce them when we come back with what side they're debating and the topic and everything, but they need some time to breathe in and do their final preparations and get ready. So let's have an intermission. So I ask, please don't leave the meeting with your computers. So just turn off your video and then go get some water or bathroom or whatever you need and come back American time at 12:30, Romanian time at 7:30, if I'm not mistaken.
Intact,
All right.
meet me back in Google Meet. Stay in here, but meet me back in Google Meet.
Okay, see you in 13 minutes.